Hey everybody, welcome back to the Win a Pageant podcast. I am thrilled with today's guest, Raliene Banks. She is a client of the Win a Pageant Academy, and I had such a pleasure working with her inside of the academy, but she came to us with a lot of motivation and a lot of drive. So Raliene Banks was born and raised on the island of Guam, and she spent 15 years serving on active duty for the U.S. Air Force as a pilot. And she started competing in pageants in 2020. So you can imagine the pageant landscape was changing a lot in that moment. And to date, she's placed third runner-up at Mrs. International, first runner-up at Mrs. Petite USA, and she won the 2021 Mrs. Regency International title. Now, while she held that title, she found out that her unborn daughter had a life-threatening disease called trisomy 13. So the experience that she had losing her daughter was something that allowed her to become an advocate for understanding and education and advocacy around trisomy 13. And she continues to serve on the board of directors for the support organization for trisomy. Now, in the pageant world, her passion to mentor other people really transformed her from a contestant all those years to now being the director. And she's the director of the Virginia State Pageant for Regency International Organization System. So Raliene, I am so honored to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
I am so excited to be here. I have been listening to you for years since I started competing, and I'm just so excited to be a part of this, Alycia.
Well, you have made us proud. I know how much work you have put in just the last few years as you've been competing in pageants, and you've had such great success at the national level. That's not very common for people who are new to pageantry. So I really want to see if you could share some tips with our listeners and our viewers about what you feel like really made you successful in pageantry in such a short amount of time.
Well, I'm going to be 100% honest. I was really intimidated when I first started out because I'm coming from a career in the military and knowing nothing about pageants, nothing about it other than what I've seen on like Miss USA or Miss Universe, to wanting to compete in the Mrs. America system. That was the very first system I did. And I started doing my research in 2019. And I thought to myself, well, what has made me successful in the past? And it's always gone back to my education. So I felt that hiring a coach would be the best use of my money. And for that pageant I competed in, I went really cheap with the dress and the hair and makeup. And I spent like all of my budget on coaching. I did okay. I ended up in the top 10, but in the Mrs. America system, you need a little bit more than just a good interview and all of that. Like you need to have the look. So I didn't give up. I competed in the USA Petite system. I went as Mrs. Guam. And for that, I got a better dress. I got a different coach. And I just think that focusing on the education piece and focusing on bringing your strengths and your past experience to your competition can really help.
Yeah, I really love how you said that because, that was something that when I was competing, education was key. Because I was like, I personally am not into dresses and fashion and things like that personally. But also, I feel like those are not things that you can just take seamlessly into other areas of your life. And so I, like you, and I think many of us, we start small. So we start with like, okay, I'm not going to over invest in the things that I know I can't take with me. Let me just test the waters. Let me kind of just get started, and just, I love what you described of like, listen, I didn't over invest in my dress. I didn't over invest in these other things, but I did invest in the coaching. And then you said that you transitioned to different coaching when you went to the petite system. And then even different again, I believe, when you went to the international pageant. What were you looking for in your education at each phase of your development? Was there something that you were looking for each one, like to fill a certain gap or anything?
There was. So my first coach that I hired, she was really great. She was Miss North Carolina Teen USA. So she really helped me out with the walking because I knew nothing about the turns and the posing. And I needed somebody to show me step by step what to do. And she transformed me from like knowing nothing at all to actually being able to do it. Um, and I got better over time. But she also taught me the basics of interview. She taught me that in interview, you really want to steer the interview to what you want to talk about, and you don't just want to answer questions. When I hired my second coach, I hired Miss USA 2008, Kristen Dalton Wolf, and she was incredible. She helped me so much, so much with stage presence. I did my coaching with her virtually. So I think that when you hire a virtual coach, it's really hard to get them to focus on your walk because it just looks different when you're on camera. It doesn't translate the same as being on stage. So I guess if you're doing a virtual pageant, it's fine if you have a coach that's in a different state and you're doing everything online. But in person, I really wanted somebody who can correct my walk. And she couldn't do that, but that was okay because I got all that training from my first coach. So yeah, she definitely helped me out with stage presence.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
when I went to you, I went to you specifically because the Mrs. International system focuses a lot on the onstage question. So for those of you who don't know the international system, when you make it to finals, your prelim scores get wiped. So your interview score completely goes away and your onstage question replaces your interview score. And onstage question was the area that I was kind of iffy about, and I just needed that Harvard level of education to get me through the onstage question. And I really think that's what the Win a Pageant Academy taught me to do with the Promise Proof Plan.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And, the gals that you mentioned, I love that strategy that you said, okay, I knew I needed like the Miss USA walk. I wanted that fierce and I wanted someone in person. I think that's awesome that you chose that. And especially someone local to your area for first time pageant and all these things. And then Kristen Dalton Wolf is a friend of Win a Pageant. We absolutely love her. And she also has a really unique style and strategy of coaching. And so that's great that you were able to get that. And then it sounds like then you were like, okay, now I know what I need for this next pageant is that to nail that on stage answer. And interesting, when you came to us, like many of our clients that come to us, they've dabbled with a lot of other things. They've tested other systems, other strategies, and all of that. And so they have a lot when they come to us, when they get to Harvard, as you said. And at that point, then it's really the refining. And when you came to us, you had so much. You're like, Alycia, here's all the things I've done. Here's this huge vision that I've got for the work that I see myself doing in the next 5 to 10 years. How do I say this in 30 seconds or less on the spot to any question in front of the judges when that's the thing that they're going to be scoring on, And it's not easy to do that. How did you go about that process of really honing in what to say in 30 seconds as you were going through the academy? How did that work for you?
That was so hard because I had to pick one thing. And I had all of these things that I wanted to talk about, kind of like this interview. There's so much I want to say, but there's only so much time, right? So I felt like I needed to focus on the one area where I was having the most impact. And for me, that was training other families on how to advocate. What I ended up doing with my platform, which was incredibly new at the time, a little bit background on this. You mentioned that my daughter had trisomy 13, and she did. She was born last September and she passed away 7 days later. So my platform was really new. My experience with these families who are impacted by trisomy was new too, but I didn't want that to stop me because I knew that I had so much to offer. The Air Force has trained me on how to be a good communicator, how to be a good leader, how to bring teams together, and really how to advocate, because that's what we do as leaders, right? So I took what I knew and I taught these families who are affected by trisomy on how to advocate for their children, because a lot of them have issues when trying to get what they need from the medical community. This disease is considered incompatible with life. So Depending on what part of the country you live in, some of the doctors and the nurses in the medical community will recommend that you either terminate or you will only give your child comfort care. And they have a hard time with, they meaning the parents, have a hard time explaining to the doctors why they want their child to go through medical intervention. So anyway, long story short, I helped them to communicate with their doctors, to advocate for their children. And I felt like that was just so powerful to be able to do that. So what I did on the international stage is I said that I could take that training that I created and transform it so that it can apply to anybody. Because once you know the basics of advocacy and communication, you could take it and apply it to anything. So I said, hey, I'm going to take this to the international level, and I will teach contestants on how to advocate for the things that they're passionate about, or anyone really. And I was able to take that answer and spin it to any question that they asked me. Actually, when we were doing rehearsals, the way we did rehearsals for onstage question is you got to do your 30-second intro, and then after you do your 30-second intro, the MC will ask you a question based on your platform. But in rehearsals, after we did the 30-second intro, the MC would just ask you some random question like, what's your favorite holiday? Or where would you take me if I were to visit you? And while they were asking those questions to the other contestants, I was sitting there just thinking like, okay, how am I going to do promise proof plan? How am I going to spin this? And I just kept practicing and practicing and practicing so that when it got to me, I was able to answer that random question that had nothing to do with my platform. And then when I got to finals, it was pretty easy because it was about my platform, and then I was able to spin it. So I really did appreciate that promise proof plan that I learned through the academy.
That's so cool. And that's really the key. And that's what our clients do so excellently, as you did as well. And it's the real strategy is to be able to receive any question. And as you mentioned, your first coach taught you, your job is to be the GP. Like she said, I think you said, she said as to steer it the way where you wanted to go. We describe it as it's your job to be the GPS, that you tell them where we're taking it, you know? And so to be able to receive any question and still go in the direction of, as we say it in the academy, promise proof plan, is how you're able to best communicate. And it's just incredible what you've been able to do. And I love the connection that you've made of your past life in serving in the military and where you're going. And, you know, that's really how excellent branding is done, is by taking, here's who I am, here's what I've learned, and then tying that to, well, where are you going? And what's the thread that connects those things, you know? And you did that so excellently throughout your time in the academy, and are still doing it even now as you step into your leadership role. Tell us about this new position as a director for that pageant.
Oh, I'm so excited to be the Virginia State Director for Regency. One of the things I really love about Regency is it's an international pageant, but it's a little bit smaller of an international pageant. It's not as known as like Mrs. International or the Mrs. America system. It's really a stepping stone pageant. And that's kind of where I got a lot of my experience. You know, thinking back to my onstage question of USA Petite, they asked me what is more important, education or experience, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're both important. How do I choose? I chose experience, and I do think that experience is really essential when you're competing in pageants or anything in life. And once I finished Petite USA, I thought to myself, okay, I went from Mrs. America, which is this huge system, to Petite USA, which is a little bit smaller. I'm thinking maybe I just need to go to something a little bit smaller, you know, like get my feet wet, get more of the stage experience before I spend all that money to compete in something that's so expensive and so big, because those bigger pageants are expensive. So I found Regency, and Regency was so affordable. When I went at large, the entry fee was only like $425, and that was it. There's no anything else. It's a little bit more than that now. They have raised their rates with inflation and everything that's going on. But what I really wanted to do is to get those women who want that experience, whether they're new and they just kind of want to try it out, or they're looking to level up their game so that they can go to something like a Mrs. International and be competitive in that type of system before spending all that money. That's really what I'm aiming for with being a state director, to really mentor those women and to create a team. Because one of the things I really loved about competing was when I went with the team and we had a miss, we had a missus, we had a miss, we had the leader of the classic division, and rooting for each other and just having that camaraderie. And that's really what I want to bring to this system.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool. They are so fortunate to have you at the helm of that role, because truly your mentorship, your leadership, and your quick experience in the industry, even just in a few short years, you really pushed yourself to stay ready and to be able to be competitive at each one of those pageant systems. You bring a lot of knowledge and experience to the Regency system. So I'm so thrilled for you. Congratulations on
Thank
that new
you.
position. That's wonderful. And is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, no matter where you are in your journey, whether it's pageantry or something else, you just got to put yourself out there. You have something to offer. Think about what you've been through in the past. We've all got all of these things. And I know sometimes it's hard to believe that you've done so much. And I do this to myself sometimes. And I'm thinking, well, who am I? Who am I to compete? Or who am I to be a director? Or who am I to do this or that? Like, I'm nobody. But then I think back to the things I've been through, the people who've helped to get me here, and what I have to offer and what I have to give so that somebody else can grow and give back. Um, I'd really just encourage you to get yourself out there and give it a shot.
That's awesome to hear. I'm curious now, um, who do you think the Academy would be a good fit for? Through your experience, having been a part of many different pageant systems and now as a director and having gone through the Academy recently, who do you think might be a great fit to go join us in the Win a Pageant Academy?
Somebody who wants help with interview, definitely. Interview, on stage question, branding. So I think if you want help with your walk, it's probably best to go with somebody in person, but the Win a Pageant Academy is definitely the best for the interview and the onstage question part.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you're right. Not everybody learns. Our program is a virtual program. Not everybody learns virtually. Some people, they really do need to have in-person coaching, and that is totally fine. There's lots of coaches for that. We're working on options for that in the Academy as well.
Oh, wow, that's
But
exciting.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. But so that's something that is important to note. If you aren't a type of person that can learn online, then the Academy might not be a great fit. But if it's something that you're able to learn and that those areas would be something, then I think that's what it's made for. So that's great to hear. Raliene, thank you again. Could you share, for those that are interested in following your journey and or being a part of your pageant, how can they find you and get in touch?
Well, my personal Instagram is at Raliene Banks. That's RALIENE BANKS. And for the Virginia Regency, it's at Virginia Regency
Wonderful.
International.
Excellent.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. Raliene, I just want to take a moment to honor you for the work that you have done. What a major transition to go from the military into pageantry and then to see your wild success and your giving back into the industry in such a short amount of time. So I just want to honor you for what you've accomplished in the last few years and say thank you for your work in the industry. We so appreciate you.
And thank you too, Alycia. You are definitely changing lives with what you do here at Win a Pageant.
Thank you so much. Well, I look forward to connecting with you again, Raliene. Thank you so much. And everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode of the Win a Pageant podcast. Bye for now.